there's stuff you work on that you think are going to turn out to be really important, and you think it's going to be just a major deal, and then and they turn out to be nothing. You know, they're either bad or nobody went or nobody saw them. And then there are other things you do just because you had to, and you have no expectations for them. In the case of Out of Sight, I wrote that because we had 3 kids all sleeping in the same room and I needed a job to buy a house in Pasadena. The Queen's Gambit was a book I just loved, and I didn't think anybody would make it. I was shocked that Netflix was dumb enough to do it. I had a wonderful time making it in Berlin. I loved every second of it, and I thought, okay, this is the end of that. And I didn't care. I didn't know if anybody would even care. It was chess after all. I mean, endings are very much a function of beginnings. And too often we're in a hurry in the beginning so that there's nothing to surprise us at the end. We cut everything out, and because of studios or because of test screenings, which are killer on the first act of movies, because, you know, they ask an audience, you know, was there any part of the movie that was slow? And people raise their hand and they will say the beginning. Well, yeah, is there any part of a book that was slow? I mean, any part of anything, but they don't say, was it too slow, or were you bored? Where were you bored?
Right.
There's a different thing. So they cut out all this stuff so you get to the end and you can't do what Lindsay is describing, which is deliver an emotional payload at the end, because that's what we really want. It's not just exhilarating, it's something that's emotional on top of that. And so you can't just say you're supposed to feel emotional here. Oh, look, they got together. You need to feel it. And there's a difference between an audience understanding what they're supposed to feel and actually feeling it. Storytelling, yarn spinning, and again, this goes back to Bill Goldman, it's in your gut. You know, how do you tell a good story? How do you hum a song on key? How do you tell a good story? It's a gut thing.
I've only watched this series once, but I don't think you used handheld until the very end.
Yeah. Good get, I would say. So Stephen and I, you know, Meisler is the cinematographer. We kind of set rules for ourselves. You know, only these lenses, never handheld, or, you know, or only handheld when for this or that, or whatever it is. We have very specific rules so that you don't want every scene to be a different movie. And sometimes, especially newer filmmakers, there's a lot of look ma, I'm directing. And so they're just trying to come up with the most flashy, you know, it has nothing to do with what's happening. It's just, so I'm a big believer, mostly because it helps me make decisions on the day. If you have these rules for yourself, you know, it's only going to be this palette. These are the colors, and no other colors are going to be let into this show. So the costume designer and the production designer can all work that way. It's going to be all natural light. We're going to shoot it, whatever your rules are. Everybody has their own rules. So with this, it was a very classically shot show. I was very moved by a movie called Ida, a Polish film. And in Ida, the camera never moves ever, ever. Camera does not move. And so people are moving within the frame and there's never an adjustment. It just sits there. And the only time I'd ever seen that was for comedy in Napoleon Dynamite, where they did that. So kind of a proscenium sort of thing. But in Ida, it never moves until the very end, when she's back in her habit. And she's walking along, and it's this handheld shot of her now back as a nun, where she'd explored life as not a nun, and now she's a nun again. It's a beautiful film. I recommend everybody see it. I wanted a similar feeling with this, and I wanted it to be this kind of sense of freedom. And if it were just a steady cam, which we did a ton of, it would feel too much like when she walks into the orphanage, where it's this kind of, I didn't want it to feel choreographed. And so what's not just the fact that it's handheld, but she's walking and then it kind of goes over through the tables. It's a very rough, the whole thing. Some people were even like, is it shaking too much? And I went, no, because it's just freedom that's going on right here. And
you see it on her face too.
You see it on her face, and look at the look at the background, you can see just how bad we're shaking, you know. It's just really rough and tumble.
But after
And
6.5 hours of
hours of
controlled,
being, exactly. And then you let her go. You let her go for a second in this super wide shot, and then back again because she's about to meet these guys. And then we bring in these guys, and then it'll get very controlled again in a moment. But so that was the reasoning behind it. It was a very much a character story thing. Feeling regret is a really interesting thing. And I think shame, guilt and shame are tricky because redemption stories are their own kind of thing. And I don't know that I want people are going to be redeemed so much as what you're really describing is this notion that people are not all one thing, especially if they feeling shame, it's because there's something else to them. There's some other thing that's happened. And so I firmly believe that every character has to be in the gray area. They are not all good. They are not all bad. And I think that's hugely important. And I think that, your good guy needs to be complicated and your antagonist needs to be complicated. And I think about when I was writing Frank Griffin in Godless, I thought, this guy is not just evil. There's something going on here where he's fighting with himself, and I think we all have that. And I think we're always trying to redefine and decide what we're going to show and what we're going to, hide. And I think that shame, guilt, all those things are a part of that, but they really are a symptom of something else, a symptom of this, of behavior or events or things that have happened that are good. And so it gets you thinking. For me, I arrive at shame because I've been thinking about all these other things that make someone live in the gray area. And the stuff that's tricky to avoid, which was particularly hard in the Queen's Gambit, is there are 3 things that get old fast. Grief, anger, and drunkenness of any kind. It gets old super fast. Watching people grieving for too long, you're like, okay, enough. Watching people be angry for too long, you're like, okay, enough. And watching people just getting stoned or drunk or whatever over and over and over, you're like, okay, I got it, I get it. And it's very tricky. So those things, and those are where people fall to those instead of what you're talking about. They're avoiding things by going there.
Right.
And usually the anger is fake, it's built off of some fake conflict or something, or they're just mad all the time or whatever it is. And so if you have real characters, then there can be real conflict. You're not just saying people are not behaving because the script said so. So again, stuff like shame, guilt, other feelings, remorse, regret, that grows out of people who are more complicated.
Benny had 2 draws, so a draw would give me the title. I wanted to win. I wanted to hammer his weaknesses. I wanted to show that fucking pirate that I could beat him.
So
even though
this
I
is
didn't
as
play the way I
much
thought I
about
should.
her and her mother as it is chess.
And he captured my center pawn, my
Right.
protected pawn.
But she's getting very specific about chess, but it doesn't matter necessarily.
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
understand.
But what you do a great visual in this moment, because we saw the first shot, it was all nicely lit, and then as things are going bad in the game, she's telling the story.
With the pawn gone, I was
do
open
this.
to a rook bishop mate because of the bishop on the open diagonal. I could protect my retreating knight by moving one of the rooks over, but the protection wouldn't last.
I'm gonna bring the volume down so you can talk, Scott. So then talk about when you get back into the game, how you shoot it differently. It's all shadows now.
Now it's dark because the game's been going on. So it's a little bit cheating to say they've been playing for a while now. And so it's not this bright thing. And it's also does serve sort of double duty for us to show sort of her interior. But the real money shot for the chess game is coming up, is at the end, when she looks across the board and sees. So we do this, we come around the board, it's very dark. It's later in the day. And you can see she's just trying, we've heard her describe the match. We've heard her describe that she's just swimming and doesn't know what to do. And then this abrupt cut
Yeah.
So that's another way of having a chess match that doesn't feel just like a chess match.